Hello Wildflowers, and welcome back to The Rambling Rose. If you're new to this channel, I'm Nancy, an Australian artist, author and cottage witch. In this episode, I'll be showing you how I created the cottage garden of my dreams, sharing 10 design secrets I've learnt over the years. If you caught my last episode, you'll know I'm preparing to move out of my tiny hideaway and into a new house. Since this will be my last episode here in this enchanted garden before I set off on a whole new adventure at the new address, I thought it would be the perfect time to reflect on what I've learnt here and what I'll do next time. Now, I've been an artist and designer for over 20 years, but it wasn't until I moved into this house just 3 years ago that I turned my hand to gardening for the first time. So, please remember, these tips are from a passionate beginner, and this is what I've managed to create in just 3 years. I am far from being an expert gardener. I just really wanted to share my creative process with you all and hope you find a little inspiration. Something I haven't shared on this channel before is that I live with a sometimes debilitating neurological disorder that shows up most often when I'm tired or stressed, as a sudden loss of motor skills, brain fog, seizures, migraines, fatigue and chronic pain. As an artist, one of the scariest things about this condition is when I can no longer use my hands, or I wake alone in the night with tremors. But the garden is like my healing place. When it's quiet here and I'm sitting among my beloved flowers, their scent on the air, butterflies and bees as my companions, the pain recedes a little, and I remember that being here on planet Earth, in a human body, no matter how fragile, is a wonderful blessing, and that to be so sensitive is just as much a gift as it is a curse. I suppose all of this is just my way of saying that I believe a beautiful witch's garden is a sanctuary where hearts can heal and weary souls can find peace. And if you spot a few weeds popping up throughout this video, you'll know why. The first tip I have to share is to immerse yourself in a world of imagination. This is where you'll gather inspiration and begin to visualize what your dream cottage garden will look like. Take out a bunch of gardening books from the library, bookmarking interesting pages and noting down the plants that capture your attention. I will leave a short list of favourites in the description below, books that really inspired me when I first began gardening. You might like to create a mood board, just like any interior designer would before beginning a new project. Scrounge your local thrift store for old gardening magazines and cut out anything that takes your fancy. Of course, any fairy loves garden journaling, where you write down your observations of the existing garden space, what worked and what didn't, the seasons and moon cycles, wish lists of plants that you adore, their medicinal, culinary or magical properties, and anything else you might want to remember as you research. You can even use it like a scrapbook and paste in seed packets, planting guides or tags from any seedlings you have planted. Or, of course, you can decorate it with gardening quotes and sketches of flowers like I have done. I also love to watch episodes of Great British Gardens over and over during the cold winter months, marvelling at their beauty and falling in love with Carol Klein's infectious personality, so that come spring my garden journal is just bursting with ideas. If you're feeling creative, you can also draw a little map of your dream garden, plotting out where you will create the different zones and giving them charming names and themes. And finally, don't forget to take the time to relax in your garden space, simply daydreaming away, lying on the grass, working your manifesting magic. You might be surprised to find that the garden of your dreams materializes over the years, just as you pictured it. My second tip is to delve into the fascinating history of your dream garden before you get started. To me, the perfect cottage garden is one where you feel as though you have stepped back in time, all the way to the Elizabethan period, in fact, when prosperity reached the English countryside in numerous ways and cottage dwellers began to plant for aesthetic purposes. By the Victorian era, gardening had become an art form in itself, with more beautiful, whimsical flowers being given preference over practical, medicinal and culinary ones, really for the first time outside of the decadent palaces and manor houses. Perhaps it is still a rather romanticised version of the past, of course, but one that is nonetheless full of old world charm and that Victorian aesthetic to enchant the imagination with visions of cheerful bursts of hollyhock and violet, poppy and peony, pansy and rose peeking out from every corner. So, if in doubt when choosing your plants, it can be as simple as asking yourself, would this have grown in a 19th century English garden? If yes, you're well on your way. You might think of a cottage garden as a riot of colour with no plan at all, but my third tip is to consider your garden a living canvas and choose your colour palette well before you begin planting. Just like Monet creating his greatest masterpiece, splashing dabs of carefully selected colour here and there, the palette of blooms and foliage is what makes a garden truly enchanting to the eye. So much could be said about this tip, an entire episode really, because the colour is the essence of the cottage garden and it's where I have the most fun. For me, I wanted my garden to feel romantic and ethereal, with feminine pastel shades and pops of juicy berry colours. So I thought it might be fun to name my palette Cupcake Shop, with colours that evoke sweet frosting like soft dreamy buttercream, fairy floss and orange sherbet, and pops of fruity jelly colours like blackberry, blueberry, marmalade and raspberry. Of course, there are always happy accidents that pop up and disrupt the carefully planned palette here and there, but I don't mind. I love it when the garden surprises me. Oh, and don't forget your foliage palette too. The shades of green you choose will have a huge impact on the overall look of your garden. For example, I've planted a lot of silvery and light green plants, which, along with white flowers, gives the garden a softer, more pastel-y, ethereal look. The next thing to consider when planning a dreamy cottage garden is the form of your plants, their shape, texture and structure. Are they tall or short, broad or wispy? You want to select a variety of heights and growing habits so that the garden has depth and looks natural. I've counted 7 different forms around my garden. There's shrubby, columnar, fluffy, wispy, climbing, sprawling and weeping. So, in the shrubby category, you've got your rounder bushy plants like hydrangeas. Then there's the tall columnar plants like salvias, hollyhock and gladioli. For my fluffy sculptural statement flowers, I have huge dinner plate dahlias, roses and zinnias. Perhaps my favourite forms are the wispy, lacy flowers, like these adorably named whirling butterflies or bee blossoms. Cupcake cosmos and Queen Anne's lace look great too. To me, these are the dancing ballerinas of the garden every time the wind blows. In the climbing category, there are twisting vines like this clematis, as well as rambling roses and wisteria to offer a feeling of overgrown wildness. Then there's sprawling, low-growing ground covers like thyme, alyssum, and these dainty violets. And finally, there's the weeping, panicle-shaped plants like this buddleia. And if I'm being really cheeky and not taking my own advice about sticking to 19th century English flowers, this incredible dreadlock amaranth fits in this category too. Tip number 5 is to encourage meandering and wistful dilly-dallying when considering the layout of your garden. In my opinion, the best cottage gardens invite you to linger a while in the charming presence of the flowers and embrace the sweetness of doing nothing, with their winding stepping stone pathways, undulating terrain and circular, sprawling or curved garden beds. If you simply must have straight edges, soften them with plants that spill out over their edges and create a little wildness. After all, how can one be a truly rambling rose if the garden design doesn't lend itself to wandering about in blissful reverie, stopping to smell the roses? My next tip is lots of fun, decorating your dream garden with whimsical, fairytale, or simply charming old-fashioned objects that any nana would adore. Think things like beautiful bird baths, painted insect hotels, wind chimes, lanterns, pretty painted bird houses, enchanted ornaments, wrought iron love seats, French bistro sets, peacock chairs, mirrors, garden gnomes, fanciful arbours. Oh my goodness, I can't stop with this list. But I guess I'm really in my element because I'm decorating the outdoor space as if it were an indoor space. Just imagine placing things around the garden that fairies might discover as they flutter about. Ooh, and don't forget the pots. Having some of your garden in pots and hanging baskets that you can move around is not only practical for sensitive plants, but it is a great way to add some more whimsy. I'm potting up some pansies. Wait, no, these are petunias, wildflowers, in this charming little tricycle planter that you might recognise from my chicken cottage episode. I still feel like it is one of my favourite garden items. It's just so super cute, don't you think? Tip number 7 is to design a garden that delights the senses. Especially when you're such a sensitive little witch like me, you need your garden to be a healing place that offers an escape from the often chaotic and overwhelming sensory experience of the outside world. With delicate fragrances, soothing tastes, gentle sensations, and soft colours, the garden can truly be your dreamlike sanctuary. And if you've got the gift, you can even communicate with the plant spirits and enjoy their incredible medicinal and magical properties too, making all sorts of herbal magic in your very own garden. It's such a joy to wander the garden picking aromatic herbs like thyme and lavender, bergamot and white sage. But of course, it is my rose goddess garden that has me truly enamoured. I cannot tell you how emotional the scent of blue moon roses makes me. I don't know why exactly, but the fragrance takes me to another time and place, and I almost feel like crying. It's so beautiful. Any fae folk out there will naturally intuit my next tip, which is to design your dream garden in a way that invites animal friends to add to the enchantment. A flutter of iridescent wings, the sweet sound of bird song, a pearlescent feather on the ground, the croaking of a frog. Finding any of these things in your garden is sure to inspire a childlike wonder. If you haven't already seen it, be sure to watch my episode on attracting native birds to the garden, where I built a painted birdhouse with my dad, but you can also plant to create a habitat for butterflies, dragonflies, bees, frogs, moths, lady beetles, and all manner of creatures to your garden. And of course, I'll be sure to make an episode one day all about attracting fairies, elves, unicorns, dragons, and maybe even bunyips too. Another thing to consider when creating your dream cottage garden is to select a variety of plants that bloom in different seasons. You want to create a space that is just as inviting in autumn and winter as it is in spring and summer. And this way, as some of your flowers fade, others will pop up and take their place in a mesmerising seasonal dance, an ever-changing display of different colours and shapes. Over the years, you will naturally learn which flowers delight in each season, especially if you keep a garden journal. But the simplest way to get started with this idea of year-round colour is to plant some bulbs in late autumn, like tulips, narcissus, daffodil, ranunculus, bluebells and snowdrops. I cannot tell you how exciting it is to see those first seedlings emerging at the end of winter, knowing that soon the garden will be awash with spring cheer. Last of all is to let nature teach you. Listen to her, feel her magic. A library of books couldn't teach you what she can. Know that you will make mistakes out there, many of them, but it is all part of the adventure. Go in and get your hands dirty and try things. Experiment, have fun and be playful. Because gardening is an art form like no other. It is so ephemeral. One day you lay down a stroke of beautiful colour, walk away, and a week later it is gone. As the seasons turn and plants jostle for light and space, nothing ever really turns out the way you planned, but rather is a constant, incredible surprise. And I think that's kind of better. I always say that gardening is a metaphor for life. And right now, as I ready my heart to say goodbye to my beautiful dream garden and start all over again, this thought comforts me greatly. I so hope you've enjoyed this episode, dear wildflowers, and that it has inspired you to take up your watering can and spade and begin creating the most incredible living masterpiece, hand in hand with Mother Nature. If you'd like to support my channel, there are lots of ways you can do so. You can like and subscribe or hit the cute little thanks button down below. You can join me over on Patreon, where you'll have access to all my free printables and bonus content, plus monthly book and craft club. Or if you're in the mood for a little shopping, you can purchase my art, oracle cards and spirit paintings. All of this helps me so much to keep creating content like this. And I'm just about to launch my very own collection of garden journals. How perfect is that? I'll leave the link below. Blessed be, sweet souls, and I'll see you again next time, somewhere the meadows grow by the waterhole and the leaves are falling in the autumn wind.